What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode review for To Your Eternity, Season 2. This is Episode 3, and with me, as always, I have Blue Spade.
Honestly, I don't know where the tone of this series is going, because this is a massive departure of all the, it just doesn't feel the same as, how it did in the first season, where Fushi meets these people, he gets into, he bonds with them, gets into a friendship with them, and then has to deal with the loss of that said person. But then, like, this is just, we just come off, out of last week with him losing Tonari.
You didn't really seem that broken up about that, too.
No. And so we essentially just start out where the last episode leaves off, in which Fushi befriends another descendant of Heisei. His name is Kahaku, who's supposedly the first male descendant of Heisei's other descendants.
One thing too is when I first saw him, I actually thought this was going to be some kind of like he was one of those, like the reverse traps, like it was actually a woman, because he does look kind of effeminate. So I was like thinking like maybe there's some kind of plot twist there, but I don't think there is. Like now that as the episode goes on, I'm like, okay, I think it's a guy. I'm pretty sure. But yeah, I thought it was they were gonna do something like that. But yeah, we get introduced to him, and he says that of course he's one of the descendants of Heisei, and at first Fushi is concerned because he thinks that as we know, all the descendants of Heisei are in love with Fushi. And they pretty much want to have his children, and but of course Kohaku states that he's only interested in women, so he's of course he's not in love with Fushi or anything like that. But there is something that happens later in the episode that kind of makes you question that. I'll just say that. But yeah, of course, he basically starts to travel with Fushi, and I guess play the role of his bodyguard, more or less.
Yeah, and we do get to see the kind of impact that Fushi had throughout the years that he's, I guess, when he's been traveling. We do get to see the effects of Tonari's work of her leading the old prison island into like this great nation, with that eventually I guess it had a positive influence throughout the country. And
well, I think they also said like her research has been passed down or something too. Like there's like she's written books or something like that.
Yeah, but there's also like an opposition towards Fushi. Like they said, I think Kahaku mentioned that there's this Church of Bennett that staunchly opposes Fushi because they view him as a devil that only brings death and destruction. Particularly like with Fushi getting the attraction of the knockers every single time he goes around.
Yeah, I also like thinking about it, I'm kind of surprised the church hasn't really been like more adamant in trying to like send people like trying to kill him or something. Like if they think he's the devil, I don't know, it's just kind of weird. Like he hasn't really been trying to hide himself or anything. He's been walking around.
Yeah, I mean, well, Fushi still has his supporters. Like he goes into a village in which pretty much the entirety of the village views him like as a deity and a god of sorts, and Fushi helps him out by manifesting all this money to help a woman pay off the ransom for her son, who's a staunch supporter of Fushi. And of course,
and it's funny because as we know, he can just materialize things out of thin air, so he just materializes all the money she needs.
Yeah, I mean, it's surprising that I don't know how that would really work in the real world if it's really legal, because it's I don't know, but
I just found it somewhere.
Yeah, but with all the attention that Fushi has been getting, Kahaku suggests that Fushi transform himself into something else rather than his his default male form that he's always been traveling around. And so he first he first tries to transform the Pioran, but Kahaku says, like, you know, he won't be able to travel well because of Pioran's old age. Anyway, and he tries to transform as Rin, but you know, her young appearance and her outfit kind of attract attention. And then he transforms into Perona, which catches the eye of Kahaku into, like, I guess developing a crush. In Fushi's Perona form.
Yeah, this is what I was talking about before. So of course, you know, Kahaku says he's only attracted to women, and of course, you know, he's attracted to the form of Perona that Fushi can take. But the weird thing about this is, like, okay, it's still Fushi himself. It's just him taking a different form. It's him taking the form of somebody else. It's not actually him. But of course, you know, Kahaku finds, you know, really it's more like her physical form attractive, but Fushi is still Fushi. But I feel like this is going to lead into, like, and I kind of hope not, but I feel like that's where this is going. It's going to be some weird thing where he does get some kind of weird feelings for Fushi, and maybe like sees Fushi as Perona herself or something, which, you know, he's not.
What's also interesting is that Kahaku, like, by the later half of the episodes, keeps referring Fushi as a she and a her.
Yeah.
So,
well, and it's weird too, because, you know, Fushi usually just takes on the form of the boy he met when he first was created, or when he was a wolf, or, you know, then he took on his form, and then he's just kind of kept that form for most of the series. So, like, to me, that's really his default form. So, like, I feel like, you know, yeah, Fushi could be either gender, but Fushi is usually that guy. So, like, to me, it makes more sense, you know, he's referred to as a guy, you know, and I feel like he's more comfortable, like, being a guy. So I don't know. It's just, the whole thing's just weird to me.
Yeah.
Because, like I said, it's not really Fushi that Kohaku is developing any kind of feelings for. It's more, you know, the form of Perona, which, you know, he's not really Perona. So,
yeah, and also the fact that Kahaku is, you know, a Heisei descendant who's had this, like, this weird obsession with Fushi one way or the other. So it could be that too. But it's just weird that
I think that's most likely where this is going. Like, because, you know, he's going to be in love with Fushi, but in love with that form of food, you know, hit that form in particular.
Yeah, and so we get introduced to this brand new character, almost like this JoJo spoof-like character. He calls himself so he's a prince of this nation, and he's called Von Tasty Peach Uralis. I can't pronounce his full name.
No, he has a ridiculous name. Like, we've seen him in the opening, of course. Like, I kind of figured he was going to be some kind of a comic relief character, but of course I didn't really anticipate the extent to how ridiculous his character was going to be. He ends up, like, trapping Fushi and Kahaku like, in a net, and basically, like, I forget exactly, like, what does he want with him again? Like, he wants to just, like, capture him.
He wants to take Fushi over to his kingdom and gain favor with, you know, with his father, or I guess the remainder of the royal family, to become the next king, you know, of his nation. And so he invites them over, and there was this one scene, like, they invite Fushi and Kahaku over for dinner, and Kahaku during that conversation brings up Tonari, saying that she wrote this journal detailing the history of Fushi and everything else. But it seems like he's thrown out a lot of revisionist history about Tonari as well, especially what she's written. And this doesn't sit well with Fushi, because Fushi technically does have a copy of, you know, Tonari's actual journal, while what Kaku's been saying is, like, supposedly they recovered Tonari's journal, saying that supposedly she wrote positive things about the Guardians, Even though like we know for a fact that she never liked the Guardians, especially when she first met Heisei back in the day. So this, this pretty much like, causes Fushi to just straight up leave and pretty much to think to himself is like, what should I even do? And then he also talks to his creator once again that so far tens of thousands of people have already died from the knockers. And of course Fushi, is still racked with guilt that he's not doing as much as he can to really help that many people. And of course his creator just points out that thousands of other people have died through natural disasters compared to the knockers. So but
we should mention too that Fushi ends up mostly taking Perona's form here because the church or one of the church that we mentioned before, like is of course after Fushi, or thinks that Fushi is the devil. So he takes the form of Perona so that he wouldn't draw any suspicion. And of course more of course sort of shenanigans ensue with this because because he took the form Perona, like they have him wear this like fancy dresses and stuff, and of course like it just shows more of Kahaku being flustered around him and stuff, and so it just gets pretty weird in that regard. We also of course get to see like the father as well, which is like the father looks even more ridiculous than that Peach or whatever the dude, like he's just this really short guy, and he has like he's got like a beard. He basically looks like a midget. Like he really doesn't look like both of these characters. Like really just don't look like they belong in the series. Like, and they just don't really fit. But they also get confronted by the aforementioned the church that there's come to like ask questions, I guess, regarding Fushi because they have like a wanted poster for him, or they're trying to find him, and they basically say they're going to come back and try to see if he's around there or something like that. So they leave, and they I guess they're maybe going to be like, I guess, potentially the bad guys in this season. I'm not sure, but yeah, they leave, and I guess they'll probably they're going to come back later.
Yeah.
Basically, the episode ends with like Fushi kind of asking for, I think his name's Bond, like his help, or him to go like get his army to help Fushi with his fight against the knockers.
Yeah, and of course that Fushi's still racked with guilt of that, that he can't really save anyone from dying from the knocker.
Yeah.
And it gets to the point that if he sees another person dying, from the knockers or through his inaction to save anyone, then he'll just straight up quit. But his creator just pops up saying that there's no possibility for you to die or just end it all, because you're just gonna end up starting over to like how you did before. So there's just like literally no way Fushi can just like straight up kill himself or just die without having to just transform himself into a rock permanently of sorts.
Yeah, which is it's kind of depressing, like that he just wants to basically just end it, and he can't. His creator's gonna basically just have him to keep coming back over and over again.
Yeah. I mean, that was kind of like the only good thing of that episode, but it's just the majority of this episode kind of goes to weird and silly at the same time.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like as long as Bond is a character in this, it feels like that's going to be like the tone, which I don't know. Maybe Bond gets some interesting character development or something, but. He's just so completely ridiculous. Like I just can't really take him seriously.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just the season has really gone into such a weird tone compared to how the first season went about. I mean, the first season we pretty much get introduced to Fushi about how he develops as a character when he, pretty much like developing himself as a more human type of character when he was like introduced to the entire world. But now with Fushi being, virtually aware of everything that's going on, it's like I don't know. It just seems like he's just running into all kinds of weird things left and right.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he seems like that was one of the interesting things about the first season, seeing him like kind of develop into, actually like learning how to speak and all that. And now like it seemed like he did have some interesting development when this season started, but since then it just feels like his character to some extent has just kind of stagnated. Like he's not much has changed about him, even though like 200 years has passed. Like, and you'd think that him being an immortal and all that, like he would maybe be like a completely different person. But all we know about him in that time that, he's just been like reading all these books and he's, I guess, learned a lot of different things. But I think like, I don't know if Kohaku points this out or something, like he didn't read anything about like, I don't know, like, stuff like anything having to do with reproduction or like human, like anything having to do with sexuality or like anything like that. He's like, which kind of reinforces to me, like he's just a completely asexual character or something. Like he doesn't care about it because like he's been like learning about everything else besides that. But that's the only thing we get. Like, and it feels like he hasn't really changed all that much since before the time skip happened.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of like, Fushi having, I don't know, being asexual. I really don't see Fushi developing any sort of romantic relationship with practically anyone.
No, I don't think that's gonna happen. Honestly, like with the way things have been going.
No, it's just like even if Heisei's descendants like have this sort of obsession with him, it's pretty clear, as night and day that Fushi will never like return any of those feelings towards any of her descendants, regardless.
No, because like when in season 1, when Hayase expressed her feelings toward him, like the only reaction he had was complete disgust, which at the time was completely understandable considering the kind of person that Hayase was. But of course, her descendants aren't the same person, so I don't know. But they also all kind of like share the obsession with Fushi.
Yeah, and not to mention the fact that Kohaku pretty much played a lot of revisionist history in terms of Tonari pretty much fueled that distrust in Fushi even further once he found out about that. So it's hard to know where it's going to go between Fushi and Kohaku, but I think this is going to be some kind of weird like one-sided love sort of thing or something. Like that's where I could see this going, and which I said is going to be weird because because Fushi is just, like I said, he's taking the form of another person, and I really don't feel like it's Fushi himself that Kohaku would be in love with. It's just it's just Perona. So I mean, and as we know, Perona's dead. Yeah,
so, I mean,
and of course, like Heisei's descendants' real objective is just to have kids with Fushi, regardless.
Well, and it's weird because like they've failed that consistently. Like they've I don't know. Like and it's also like that's another thing I'm questioning. Like you'd think that they would try harder to do that. But they really kind of, it feels like they give up and then they just conceive with somebody else. But they all are still in love with Fushi for some reason. So I just don't really understand that. I mean, I don't know. Like I said, you'd think they would try to, even if he didn't want to, like, force him to conceive or something, if they were so obsessed with him and they really wanted his children. But yeah, that hasn't happened. So I don't know. It's like, that's just kind of a weird plot point to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I don't like, so far, like I said, I have mixed feelings about season 2. I'm kind of wondering where the plot's going, but I'm interested to see where it's going to go. But I don't really have too much else to say about this episode in particular.
I just hope that they develop Bone's character a lot more properly than how he was showcased in this episode, because hopefully he we get to see him mature a little bit, in terms of forming his friendship with Fushi in the next set of episodes before Fushi moves on to something else. So I don't know. It just seems like the tone, the tone and the pacing, of these last several episodes have gone in a weird direction.
Yeah, I really wasn't. The main thing for me was that just like crazy like time skip of like 200 years. And I mean, it would be one thing if they like did something with that, but it feels like they really didn't. Like it feels like he didn't really do all that much in that time. But yeah, that all being said, guys, until next time, we will see you all later.